Welcome to CRE Fast 5 Interview Edition. Today, I am very pleased to be joined by Chris Ressa, the COO of DLC Management. Chris, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Connect with you.
Yeah, same.
My pleasure. Really glad you could join us. So I wanted to invite Chris today because he is not only a social media rock star who is widely followed, but also has some very interesting perspectives on multi-tenant retail. And so much of our content has been focused on single tenant. Chris, I think this is a great opportunity for our listeners to kind of broaden their understanding of what's going on with retail at large and get some background on what you're seeing in the multi-tenant space. So why don't we start with a quick overview of you and DLC?
Well, so DLC, we own and operate shopping centers on the eastern half of the United States today, from call it Maine to Florida to Texas to Minnesota. And it's about 15 or 16 million square feet, give or take, of retail that we own. And, you know, our tenants are your household names like Walmart, Dollar Tree, TJ Maxx, Starbucks, down to the local pizzeria in your neighborhood. We primarily own grocery anchored and power centers. So power centers being, call it a Target, Dick's Sporting Goods, TJ Maxx, Bed Bath & Beyond type center with maybe like a McDonald's and Starbucks out in the front. And we own grocery anchored centers as well, about half and half. But through the pandemic, we learned from this new word, essential, that about 70% of our assets are essential retailer anchored. So that's either a grocery store, Walmart, Target, wholesale club like Costco, BJ, Sam's, something like that. And, you know, we pride ourselves that we're a people first organization, assets second. And we believe if we do the best to take care of our people and to train and develop the team, that they will in turn take care of the assets. And so that's kind of how we operate, and that's who we are. I started in commercial real estate at Sherwin-Williams. So I was on the corporate real estate side. I was a tenant. I went to a different developer in New York City called Ashkenazi Acquisitions, and now I'm on the landlord side. So I've floated on two sides, which is the tenant and the landlord side. And either I was a tenant or I was a landlord, and primarily for the majority of my career, I've been a landlord. And that's what I'm up to today, and that's what we do.
Thank you. Appreciate the background. So you are, without question, one of the most positive in terms of the retail revolution and what we're going to see for 2021. And I will preface that by saying I don't think you're blind to the challenges by any stretch. But I do think you have a really interesting perspective on why retail will continue to thrive. Can you kind of walk me through what makes you hopeful for not only the end of this year, but as things turn over into 2021?
Yeah, so there's a few categories that I would, bucket it in. So first, financial. And the financial piece of it is there is no doubt that consumer shopping habits are evolving, but it is really challenging to turn a profit selling goods online, door to door to consumer households. And if Carly and Chris wanted to open up a t-shirt shop, the cost of entry is probably cheaper than a brick and mortar location, but to scale the business, it is much more cost effective and efficient to have it in a brick and mortar store. You can think about it, if I have all these goods, 4,000 goods going to one store, or I have to ship 4,000 goods to different households. So either the price of the good has to come down, which I think is a challenge, or they have to give away free shipping, which is a challenge. You know, Amazon spent $4 billion in shipping in Q1. And so I think that there was a lot of retailers gobbling up, direct to consumer brands and digitally native brands gobbling up market share coming into the pandemic, but very few were profitable. You have to get to the scale of Walmart, Target, and Amazon, and that's not the majority of retailers. And I don't know how much, how they can hang on for so long. And if you think about it, the space is getting, and so that's just the financial economics of it. It's not cost effective to deliver individual products to the home. I think that buy online, pick up in store, and they call that the last mile. And I think buy online, pick up in store could be the answer to the last mile. It gets people to a brick and mortar store. It gives people, the consumer, the convenience of shopping online, as well as getting out into the neighborhood, and it's a cost effective for the retailer. If just because the consumer wants it, if the retailers can't profit from it, it'll be a challenge. And I think, when you look at, there might be, right, and I've paid for shipping before, I think we all have, but if you think about it, especially with daily needs stuff, as of like 2017 or 2018, I'm not quite sure, I think the stat was like 78% of Americans were paycheck to paycheck. And so if that's the case, they can't afford to pay for shipping if eventually we have to get to a place where that gets laid out onto the consumer. And if they can't pay for shipping, either the price of the product goes up, which they can't afford to do either, or they're going to have to get to the store so that it's which in some cases is more convenient. I always talk about what is more convenient, the ability to order it and get it to me in a couple of days or tomorrow, or just walking out of my house and going to get it right here, right now. And so I think it's your definition of what's convenient to you. So I think just the financial, yeah, go ahead.
Let me dive into that for just 1 second, because you covered a lot of good points. In this push for convenience, are you doing the parking lot pickup for some of your smaller tenants that maybe don't have a good in-store pickup system? Are you doing that almost to-go order model for tenants that previously didn't have anything sort of omni-channel about them? Or is that something sort of TBD that you're trying to implement still?
So we've rolled out what we call internally at DLC park and pickup at every shopping center, or a majority of our shopping centers, not every, majority. And we did that in the midst of the pandemic, given the buy online, pick up in store, to try to, I think that's a long-term trend, because to me, it's just math, and that is a long-term trend that will play out. And so it's convenient for the consumer. Heck, I don't know, Target's amazing. On their app, you can buy it and get it delivered same day. You can go to the store and shop. You can go buy online, pick up in store. You can go buy online and they'll put it in the trunk of your car. So to me, it's not about one channel versus the other. It's having, multiple channels to and controlling your channel that you want to sell it at. But yeah, to answer your question, we are doing park and pickup.
Interesting. And are you finding that tenants are opting in across the board, or is it a few of the big names? How widespread has that been? I think
that it is. So there's no cost to the retailer on our end, and it's, I think that some are trying to, there's no cost to us, right? They're not paying us, but they might, if they didn't have a digital presence previously, then maybe it's just they're calling the store and they're having them bring it out, right? I don't know about you, but I went to the bagel place by me during the pandemic, and I, we're still in the pandemic, in the beginning stages of the pandemic, I called and, said I want, a bagel with cream cheese, and I drove up and they dropped it in my passenger side window. And so that was park and pickup, but it wasn't, some digitally, technologically advanced system, right? There was a place for me to park and pick up, but it was just a call ahead to go type scenario where they brought it out to my car. We're seeing that. We're seeing some adoption, but there's definitely some, mom and pop retailers who are trying to figure out a lot of other things as well. And so we're not at 100% adoption. I don't know that we'll ever be at 100%, but I expect it to grow as this picks up steam.
How do you think the park and pickup model is going to affect overall ticket dollar values? So, I know if I were to walk in Target or Costco, I'm going out with 10 things that I didn't even think about when I perhaps was browsing on the app. So walking in store always has these sort of other benefits associated with it. Do you think there'll be any material impact to overall profitability if consumers are just ordering the one or two things that they probably actually need? Or do you think in browsing the app, they're also adding additional things kind of like they would if they were in store?
Yeah, I think that the the ICSC did this halo effect study, and there's I don't know the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but there's a significant increase in shop. If someone buys online and then they go in the store, they typically buy something else, and it increases the basket size. I think that is definitely something that will continue to happen, especially, if the retailer has unique products, variety of products and different offerings, and has all the right sizes and shapes and whatever it is that they're buying. You're going to see a lot of that. I think that is for certain. There's no, I still think the American consumer at scale loves to go shopping.
Mm-hmm. I think we might see a bit of battle between convenience and overall profitability from the retailer side, because if you're doing curbside pickup, obviously the consumer wants convenience, but then you're cutting out those ancillary goods that they might add if they're actually going into the store to pick it up. So I think that will be an interesting, stat to watch if the overall ticket value goes down if it's curbside versus in-store pickup, if there's any difference.
Yeah, I'd say that the analysis, I don't know that's going to be the overwhelming analysis. I think the analysis will be what would that have cost if I had to ship it to your home?
True. That's probably more black and white anyway.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. Interesting trends. So among your centers, is there a certain type of tenant or a category that you're particularly excited about that you think is kind of carrying retail moving forward, or is it a mixed bag of goods still that makes your centers work so well?
I would, pre-pandemic, I was into every retail descriptor that there ever was. And, with, entry-level people, no matter the department, I would always say, what's the difference between discount and off price? Or what's the difference between off-price, discount, and outlet? And I think the media construes things like that. And so I want to make sure, because our leases define typically what is off-price versus discount or outlet. And I thought I heard every term in the book. And then the government came out with this new term called essential. And I had
which I'm really tired of.
But I had never heard the word. It wasn't created by retail. That was created by government. All the other words created by retail. And, my friend Josh Simon from Simon CRE, he came on the show and he said, the buzzword was pre-pandemic was experiential, and now it's essential.
Exactly.
And so I think it's, everyone's really seeing this. It's the centers dominated by what the government dubbed essential are really the strongest right now.
Interesting. Okay. Do you think that is a COVID, well, obviously it's a COVID necessity. Do you think it will continue post-vaccine, let's call it? God willing, we have something in 2021 and we're all back at it in the office shopping and, back to our normal lives of some variety. Do you think this concept of essential being more core and more valuable will stick around? Or is that kind of a flash in the pan due to our situation?
I think there's very few groups that can profitably deliver commodity-driven items at scale profitably. There's debate whether Amazon can do it or not through e-commerce. Can deliver it profitably through e-commerce. So I think, there will be an increased percentage of, online ordering for grocery, no doubt. But today, I think in August, 84% of the retail sales were done in a store, 16% online. And even through, coming out of the pandemic. So, and I think that was for July numbers when the census released that. So I think that essential will be, especially, in a recession, essential always wins. And I think that coming into, the next phase, whether that's a grocery, a general merchant, a dollar store, a drug store, fast casual food, whatever might be deemed essential, a home improvement store, I think they're going to be winners for a long time. They were winners going into the pandemic. So, I still think they'll
You're
be
right.
winners. So.
What about our experiential tenants? And you're exactly right. That was all we were talking about, I feel like, right up until March 7th, basically. Do you think they will reinvent themselves? Will we go back to bounce houses and indoor climbing gyms and iFly and Sky Zone and all those things that I personally think are a blast and love, but can't say I'm too excited about right now? Do you think they come back? What's that look like?
So I think that, I'm a landlord of some of those, but not nearly as much as some of the essential retailers. I'm a landlord of some theaters and some trampoline parks and gyms. I am a landlord of a significant amount of gyms. And so I believe that at the end of the day, I don't know about you, I have 2 young kids, we're dying for family entertainment opportunities right now. The pent-up demand for that, I think, is strong. There were a lot of concepts that probably weren't financially doing well going in. And I think that's the rub in any industry, whether it's the cruise lines, travel, whether it's retail. If you were struggling financially going into this, I think it makes it a challenge, like going into any recession. And so some of those groups in those entertainment were in growth mode and not yet profitable, or they were laggards going in. And so it makes it even tougher now. But I think just the concept of in-person experiential entertainment type uses, that's here to stay. I think it's going to go through, some type of revitalization, because a lot of times they were in, an enclosed mall. And I think shopping with a roof over our head, I don't know if that's how it's going to be done at scale. Obviously, there'll be malls that'll be here, but I think there's no doubt there's going to be some malls that close up. And there was a lot of that done in these regional, destinational type shopping environments. And I think those seemingly the daily needs essential are what are thriving. But I think it's short-lived. I think, in 2022, we'll be looking back on this a little differently. And I think there will be that experiential. It was proof that we craved it. I mean, you look at just the simple anecdotal information of how many people are cooped up and want to get out. Right. And,
Right.
We're still like primarily quarantined here. And I think that experiential will be here.
Okay. I agree. For our listeners, both Chris and I are located in the New York metro area and basically still in quarantine.
Yeah.
I mean, we can get out a little bit, but it's been a very solid block from the beginning of March onwards. So if you're listening from another part of the country and you're out and about, consider yourself lucky. We are dying to get back out there in the New York area for sure. Hopefully that comes soon.
Yes.
Let's switch gears. There's been a lot of conversation about some unique backfill tenants for vacant retail. And one thing that has been asked of me many, many times in the last few months is the concept of ghost kitchens. Have you thought about adding a ghost kitchen? And it seems like you actually don't have a ton of vacancies, so this may not even be relevant to you because your centers are so well positioned.
I think our
What are your
centers are
thoughts on that?
positioned. We do have vacancy. We don't. We definitely have vacancy. We buy not related to COVID per se though. We buy value added stuff, and we use our operating platform to redevelop, release, reposition it. By example, and this is a good example. We bought a center in Frederick, Maryland. That was a Kmart anchored center. And we bought that in August of 19. And then in December of 19, Kmart left. And we're going to do a whole facade renovation. And we turned that Kmart into 4 separate boxes. So it's vacant. It's vacant today, but it's under construction. One of those was Lidl. One of those was,
Nice.
which is a grocery store. So we turned a
Mm-hmm.
non-grocery anchored center. I don't know if Kmart would be considered essential. I think they would. I'm not sure. But a non-grocery anchored center into a grocery anchored center. We put an Ollie's Bargain Outlet next to them. And then we just signed today a national home improvement center tenant for half of the remaining box. So we have 1 space left. So that's the type of thing we like to, we're an operator, we're vertically integrated. So we like to be able to take our national relationships, our expertise, and leverage the platform to add value to property. So sometimes that means we do have vacancy. To your point on ghost kitchens, we have not had a significant amount of ghost kitchens in our portfolio. We don't have any, at least that I know of today in our portfolio. Maybe there's some restaurateur doing it and I don't know. We haven't signed a ghost kitchen deal. I think, a lot of our portfolio is suburban, and I think it's definitely today it's a little bit more denser urban, right? Even if you considered we're in New Jersey, the Hobokens of the world, suburban, I would consider that very urban. And I think it's a little easier for them in those markets when you're spaced out in less dense areas, right? I don't know that a ghost kitchen in Kinnelon, where I live, would do really well today. And we own in suburban America. So I think ghost kitchens are real. I think it still has there's a lot of innovation and maturation to come from that. There's certain foods that travel well and certain foods that don't. And I think that'll all matter. And there's a lot of things about it. One of the things, we had James Walker, the head of Nathan's famous their real estate on, and it was during like the midst of the pandemic in March, and they had just signed a ghost kitchen deal in New York City, for like a bunch of locations in the city and the borough. So that was interesting. And they did that before they he said that on my podcast after they reported earnings to the street. So anyone out there, take a look. I think that's a good insight to how chains are looking at ghost kitchens and utilizing them. I think that's a good one to do. It just happened, in the midst of the pandemic.
Very interesting. I know ChickfilA is testing it in some markets, and then of course your more fast casual sit down restaurants are trying anything to be profitable at this point. But I know there's some chains in other markets that are testing it as well. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I agree that it has a long way to go, but interesting concept.
Yeah.
So speaking of different,
the other thing I would say is I think, if there's anything, there's no doubt the restaurant industry is going through a challenging time, but I will, long term, I'll bet on the American restaurant. I mean, people love to go out and eat, and I just don't think that's going away. I think we're going to do it differently and it's safer, but I don't think everything's going to be order in food to your house and get takeout every night. That might be today, and that might be the next 12, 18 months, but long term, I'd bet on the American restaurateur.
I love your face as you were saying that. It was kind of a scrunched up, like, it can't be. So it's time to get out, right? There is outdoor dining in New Jersey. You can escape for a little bit.
Yeah.
Too funny. So let's segue into different markets. So DLC owns in a good number of states. My team sells properties all over the country as well. So we're both constantly analyzing and looking at different markets. Where are you excited about? And that obviously is opportunity by opportunity. So don't expect you to just list a city and then for our listeners to think that everything there is gold, because that's never the case. But are there pockets or areas where you think there's a lot of growth, or that you're really focusing from an acquisition standpoint?
So our acquisition model, we've built a platform that we can operate nationally. We have offices all over. We have offices in Dallas, DC, Atlanta, Chicago, Buffalo, and New York Metro. And so our first, geography matters. We're investment thesis driven. So we're looking for value add big deals that we want to redevelop and reposition and multi-purpose and do a bunch of things to really and leverage the platform to access value. And so when you do that, if you focused on any one market, there would be very few deals to buy. And so we look across the country, and if there's an interesting opportunity, then we'll start to look into the commercial real estate fundamentals of that marketplace, like the market and the demographics and things like that. One of our more recent acquisitions was in Allen, Texas, and Dallas. So definitely, going into this, we're hot on Dallas. But, I would say this, a lot of the public sector has been focused on the major MSAs, Chicago and Texas, and that's really the coasts, Chicago and Texas, right? The major MSAs are the coast, Chicago and Texas. But I think, the kind of a little bit of our view is, and Dan Hurwitz had said this, you don't have to stand on the roof of a shopping center and see the ocean to make money. And so, there's opportunity. The way I would tell the listeners is you have to have the right skill sets and team. It's really about the team. But can you buy things in Wyoming and Des Moines and Iowa and North Dakota and have a great retail product? Absolutely.
Interesting. What completely different angle here? What one piece of advice would you give to someone, either a new investor or a new broker, someone coming into commercial real estate now with all of the instability? I personally think there's tremendous opportunity right now, and I'm exceptionally bullish on the industry in general. Love my job and think we have a lot ahead of us. That's not the case across the board, though. There's a lot of doom and gloom and, a lot of concerns. If you were new, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to wade through all of the data that's out there and say, how do you start? How do you jump into this industry? And that answer is probably different depending on how you're coming in. But how would you look at things if you didn't have a really deep baseline?
From an investor standpoint, I would say build the right team, whether that's external consultants or you're hiring within. I think it's really about the team and surrounding yourself with people who understand the marketplace and are experienced. Especially in retail, it's so complex, and that's why it's so exciting. Mm-hmm. And the team matters. That would be my biggest advice, and I would make sure I had the right team. From someone coming into commercial real estate, I always ask the question, when someone says, what do you do for a living? And they say, I'm in real estate. What is your initial gut reaction? What's your initial gut reaction when someone says that? What do you do for a living? And they say, I'm in real estate.
I say great, what type, honestly, because I think there's a huge difference between residential, property management, commercial. So my follow-up question is difficult until I have at least a basic understanding of what they mean.
And what do most people do you think when someone says, I'm in real estate?
Probably residential, because it's so common.
I think they think they're a residential realtor, right? And
right.
I say I'm in real estate. I'm not a broker. I'm a landlord, an investor. And I think that and someone new in the business, I think the first thing I would say is there's so many different areas of real estate. You could work on the debt side. You could work for a lender. You could work for a landlord, a tenant. You could be a broker. You could be in the title insurance industry. You could be a lot of things. So I would say first, get your arms around what it is in real estate that is available, and then understand what skill sets are needed for those and have the self-awareness about you, and then go, research that. Because when people say real estate, I think they think, is it residential or commercial, and do they sell the property on behalf of someone else? When I think of real estate, my first gut reaction is when someone says I'm in real estate, I'm like thinking, how much real estate does that person own? And that's not, I don't think, the normal reaction of people when they say I'm in real estate. But that's that's mine. And so I would, I would say, learn about all the different avenues, because there's so many different areas of commercial real estate that you could get into. If you decided to, and you were first about being a broker, I would say 3 key things: network, read, and learn your market.
And to that point, do you have a book recommendation? It's a great question that people like to ask frequently. If you had one
book on any book.
I know, it's tough.
Pre-pandemic, I was reading like 2 books a month. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people say Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a great investor first book.
Big fan of that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's that. I think from what I'm reading right now is Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, and I like it.
Absolutely love Tim Ferriss. Really interesting ideas. I have read that as well. So awesome. We're on the same page. Good choices. Yeah, good choices. So we are almost out of time. 2 things. Tell the listeners how they can reach you if they'd like to connect directly.
First way, they can reach me on LinkedIn. My hashtag is #Ressa on real estate. And the second way, listen to our podcast, Retail Retold,
which is exceptional. You do a really nice job with it. So I'd encourage everyone to plug into that as well. All right. Any closing advice, remarks, last comments that you want to leave our listeners with? Because you did this to me last week. So just coming back to you right now.
I would say the following. I would challenge anyone to think about, name one retailer, or name 2, 1 that went out of business purely because of e-commerce, the competition e-commerce. And I would tell you that list is extremely, extremely small. The majority of retailers that have gone away usually struggled with one of the 5 things that I think are, the things I talk about of great retail. 1, great leadership. 2, operational excellence. 3, a product or service at a value that people want to pay for it. 4, a great experience in the store. And 5, a strong balance sheet. Any retailer that hits on those 5 cylinders is going to be here forever.
That is a very succinct and smart list. I feel like we should make that a PDF and just print it and have it be a baseline, for every retailer, everybody in commercial real estate. Those are great things to keep in mind, really, for everybody. Well done.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. I think we covered a lot of really interesting information. I appreciate your perspective. And that was tonight's episode of CRE Fast 5 and our interview series. Thank you to everyone for listening as well. See you again soon.
Thanks so much.